Hello, everyone. Wow, episode 13. Okay, that was a really good one, I have to say. Probably, again, it's going into one of my favorites of season 7 because they really covered a lot of ground in this one, and we even had a big momentous occasion occur. So without further ado, let us discuss episode 13 titled Hello, Goodbye. So how I'm going to talk about this is I'm going to split up the story into two parts. So the first one I would like to discuss is Roger and Bree's story. So in this episode, they're still trying to search for their son. And of course, Roger's in the past looking for him, while Bree has just learned that Rob has kept him in the present. So now she has to go find him wherever he is, because Rob, of course, will not tell her where he is. So Bree has kept Rob Cameron in the priest hole in their home, and she goes with Mandy to go to the police. However, while Bree is on the way to the police, Mandy suddenly senses Jemmy, and the connection is back between them, which is, I'm not sure how this connection works exactly. I'm not sure how close and how far apart they have to be for it to work. She only senses him when he's within a certain radius, so anyway, she starts to sense him again. And then Bree plays a game of hot and cold so Mandy can tell her where to find Jemmy. She happens to stop right where the dam sign is, and she realizes, oh, he must be in the dam because, of course, Rob would put him there. So, meanwhile, Jemmy, who has been down there for God knows how long, Jemmy does actually happen to remember the story that Bree told him about when she got stuck in the dam, of course, courtesy of same man. So he remembers every detail, and he actually is able to follow his way out, at least to the point where the portal is. Now, this is an interesting part where the story matches up. So Roger and Buck have followed the way to the stones where they know that the dam is eventually going to be. And there is definitely a stone circle right there. While they're there, Roger's calling out Jemmy's name. And interestingly, Jemmy seems to hear him. However, this is where the moment builds up and you think, oh my God, Jemmy's going to travel to the past to go to his father. But no, this was a really good fake out. Right when you think Jemmy has traveled, Roger and Buck notice a boy. We don't see who the boy is, but then Bree and Mandy are driving towards the dam. Bree spots Jemmy right in the road, right as Mandy is saying, hot, hot, hot. And yeah, so he made it out. He didn't travel. It turns out the boy that the two men see is a different character. So he's just somebody that they try to get information out of because he happens to have Roger's father's hat, or a helmet, I should say. And he actually gives them information about what the man was doing and tells them that he went into the woods. So that is where the trail is going to lead. But yes, Jemmy did not travel. That was a really good fake out. And it also kind of was reminiscent of season 1 when Claire tries to run back to the stones to Frank. And Frank happens to be at the stones right at the same moment. That was really a good throwback. Which I get the feeling, I don't know if it plays out that way in the books, but either way, I like that it is a reference to that moment in season 1. So Bree still goes to the police, and she brings them back to Lellybrock, where they go to the priest hole, which is still locked. Keep that in mind. And the police announce themselves, and right as they enter, no one is in there. So Bree assumes that there must be somebody helping him, because how on earth could he have gotten out of there by himself? Which, yes, she makes a very good point there. I don't know if the sister is in on it, but she tells them to question her. And, of course, the police are not believing the story. They think that she was having an affair with this man because, of course, she tries to explain that Roger's in Boston and she can't get a hold of him. So it's the story is kind of adding up in that way to them, not because, of course, they can't tell the truth about the time traveling thing. But So yes, she tries to get their help, but they are, as usual, useless. So what she does is she has Fiona and Ian take care of the kids, and she gives Fiona the letters basically for safekeeping, and she plans to go back to Lallybroch because somehow Rob got a key, or somebody has a key. I didn't quite follow that part. So anyway, it sounds like she's gonna try to travel back to go get Roger because she knows he's never gonna stop looking for their son. But I don't know. This is where I don't know how the story adds up. Like how they're going to meet up with Roger. But I guess we'll find out with that part. Now back to Roger. So he and Buck go into the woods to go find the man who is his father. And while they're walking through, they happen to spot a man who is dressed in 20th century clothing. And the man, of course, he's freaked out because probably everybody at this point has been treating him like this scary supernatural creature. So he also, of course, doesn't understand where he is. So Roger tries to explain to him, like, no, you're fine. You're in the, like, 18th century, and he's a time traveler too. And he tries to explain as much as he can to him, but one thing he never tells him is that he's his son. Because I think he's trying to not mess anything with the timeline. But at least the man is comforted by the fact that Roger is a time traveler and that he knows all this information. One thing, of course, that Jeremiah, who is his father, is concerned about is that he knows that his son must be worried about him, and Roger actually comforts him in saying that he'll be all right, which, aw, that was a touching moment. They suddenly hear dogs and people approaching, so they have to run through the woods, and it basically cuts the reunion short because Roger has to get his father at least back to the Stones to at least try to get him back to his time. So he tries to explain to him, like, think of your wife, and he says her name, which then makes the man question, like, wait, how do you know my wife's name? And Roger tries to say that it's not important, but the man still wants to understand, like, why do you know all this about me? So Roger tries to change the subject, and he tells him that they win World War II. Like, he's trying to give him some motivation to go back. So eventually he accepts what he has to do. Roger is able to give him the gemstone, and he tells him again to, like, think of where he wants to go. And then right as he walks to the stone, okay, Richard Rankin, like, nailed this moment. Like, brought tears to my eyes, and it's doing it again. Right as Jeremiah's walking to the stones, like, the way Roger says, I love you, so quietly, but also almost like he wants to say it louder. It's just such a moment that's so heartbreaking because Roger finally found his father and he already has to say goodbye to him. And this is obviously where the title comes in. It's literally hello, goodbye. Like, he only got a moment with him. But I think it's also a comfort to know that his father didn't die the way he thought he had. And just to even get to meet him, like, fully meet him as a man who understands things now. Just such a heartbreaking moment. And another interesting thing that happens right after Jeremiah walks through the stones is that Roger suddenly has a memory of him being with his father underground during an airstrike. So it's a very interesting question here because Roger is lamenting later on with Buck, like, he doesn't really remember any other memories other than this moment, which is interesting because it makes you think in that second that, oh, that means that his father made it back and he got to spend more of his life with Roger. But apparently something's just not quite adding up. Like, why isn't Roger having more memories if this is the case? But then why is he also having this memory Like, there's just a lot of questions, and it causes Roger to think about, like, maybe it didn't happen. He almost wonders if his father didn't make it back, and it causes him to realize, like, that must be how scared his son must be, because Roger also felt scared when his father had disappeared. So it's just kind of this moment that's paralleling what he's going through. But yeah, I don't quite get the memory then. If it's just supposed to be something that he would have wanted or hoped for. It's just the way that it suddenly came on right after his father went back through the stones, so you know, it's up for debate for now, unless they want to answer it later on in the season. But it's just an interesting concept, and Roger even talks about how he sometimes wonders if you don't always get to decide where to go through the stones. Sometimes the stones decide for you, because he knows that he was sent there, maybe not for Jemmy, but to save his father. So it's all a very interesting concept, and it's also, it kind of adds a gravity of like fear in a way, because what if you end up somewhere that's not in your control, even though you want to go somewhere really badly? So it kind of adds another layer to the whole time traveling thing. But it also makes Roger realize that maybe Jemmy isn't in the past. So does that mean Roger and Buck are going to go back to the present, or somehow he has to meet up with Bree and the kids? I gotta say, I'm gonna keep this as spoiler free for myself as possible, but I'm genuinely curious how they're going to do this. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed the story arc. Like, they tied up a loose end that was going on for a few episodes, and it was a very interesting moment for Roger, especially because throughout this show, throughout the books, he kind of has all these revelations of like, things are not what I thought they would be. Things are not the way I thought or was taught that they are. So he just keeps having these moments where his mind just keeps getting blown. And I think like meeting his father just really is like this big epiphany for him. Like, I thought I knew this, but there's so much more to it than I thought. All right, now the other part of the story. Let's talk about Ian and Rachel's wedding. So yes, they got married in this episode, and it was a very interesting episode, or very interesting scene. I just love the interaction between Claire and Jamie in this moment. Now, I do not know how much time has passed between the last episode and this episode. It seems like there's a little bit of time in between. I don't know if it's about a week or something like that. I'm going to assume that Philadelphia has been claimed by the revolutionaries at this point. I'm not positive, but it seems like that's the case because there were no British soldiers around, and it seems like all of our heroes are there, so I guess they claimed Lord John's house, which is another strike against him. That's poor Lord John. They're just constantly offending him in so many ways. I'll really quickly interject here that the only time we see Lord John is when he is found sleeping in the woods by an American regiment. And Lord John is actually really quick on his feet here. He makes up a quick story about who he is. He gives a fake name. And amazingly, he seems to be believed. The way they ended the scene, like, sure, we'll help you get you out of those irons, because he still has his irons on. But I don't know if I trust this situation, let's just say. I couldn't tell that if Reverend Woodsworth, who seems to be in charge of this regiment, if he really believed Lord John or not. But we'll see if Mr. Bertram gets out of this one or not. I almost get the feeling he's in trouble. honestly. Like, they know he's lying. But we'll have to see how that goes for him in the next episode. But yeah, that's how we saw Lord John. Now we're going to backtrack really quick and talk about a couple of things that happened before Rachel and Ian's wedding. So Ian is, of course, preparing himself, and Jamie comes in and he tries to, like, help him prepare, especially for the wedding night. And Ian, like, tells him, like, the only thing that he's concerned about is that it's not him per se, but he's worried about how Rachel is going to do during the night because she's a virgin. But Jamie tries to tell him, like, honestly, it's going to be fine because he himself was the virgin in the situation, even though Claire was the experienced one, and it worked out fine. So I liked the little moment between uncle and nephew, especially because his parents can't be there at this point, which I personally don't know why they didn't have Jenny come to the Americas, because it does happen in the books, and it seemed like they were replacing Laura Donnelly so they could have Jenny in the whole second half of season 7 at least. I don't know. Anyway, but yes, it's nice that Jamie can be there for Ian, and I just love the moments when they get to bond and confide in each other. Also, there was a little comment about Rollo getting old, and I'm I'm worried, because that's one part of the story that I'm not looking forward to. I was genuinely afraid they were going to cover that in this episode, but I know it's coming. Prepare thyself with tissues. The good news is that Denzel actually makes it to the wedding. He had received notice from Ian and Rachel, and they were worried he wasn't going to show up, but thankfully he does. And he meets up with Jamie, and he tells him about Lord John, that he saw him and that he was concerned about him because of the fracture. And he also tells him that he tried to help him escape because they were basically making sure he was well enough to stand at the gallows. And Jamie finally looks guilty. And I will say, the way that Sam Heughan does the facial expressions in this episode really, like, conveys Jamie's guilt, like, very well. But I'm still not terribly forgiving about how he was in the last episode. Not yet. Maybe I'll get there eventually. Like, I've read arguments that he had every right to be upset, and of course he does. He is definitely in the right to be upset about what happened. Especially the way Lord John explained it. That was not good, I'll admit. However, the way he talks to Claire, the way he tries to get the story out of her, is not well done. That was not good on his part. And he didn't really show much understanding in that she was grieving over his death. And how many times has this woman thought this man has died? Like, at this point, it should be known how she is going to feel and react when she learns that he dies. Simple as that. Eventually, I know they made up and everything, but could have been better. And apparently it is better in the books, which I don't know why they... I'm not usually one to tote that the books were better than the show, but in this case, maybe. Anyway. But yes, Jamie seems genuinely concerned for Lord John's life, even though he tells Denzel, like, oh, he can take care of himself. It's like, wow, that is the easiest way for you to get out of this. But it does eat away at Jamie later on in the episode, but this was an interesting way to plant the seed of guilt. Also, a quick scene that happens is Claire and Mercy are helping Rachel get ready for her wedding, and she's basically, like, asking, like, how does one get through basically worrying about their partner going into battle, and does it ever get easier? And Claire tells her, like, you just do what you have to do. And Mercy also tells her, like, it shows you just how much you love each other, and basically you find the strength that you need to be there for your man. So it's kind of a nice little moment between the three of them. And we know that Mercy and Henry wanted to get married a couple episodes back, and it looks like they still clearly have deep feelings for each other. And hopefully they will get to have that wedding at some point. I don't know if we're going to see it, but I definitely want to see more of their characters. So when the wedding commences, Rachel walks in with Denzel, and he gives her away to Ian. Now, this is a different kind of wedding. There's no priest. There's nobody to officiate the wedding in this moment. But basically, Rachel's kind of being the one to speak and explain how this works. So I'm not sure how the Quaker religion works. But in this moment, she tells them that they all will sit and keep their eyes closed, stay silent, and once the spirit moves them to speak, that'll be the moment. And it's kind of a funny scene because they're sitting there for a while, and the way that Claire just opens her eyes and she's like leaning towards Jamie and she's explaining, like, so when are we supposed to know when to speak? And they just have like this funny little back and forth banter, which this is when I love Jamie and Claire, by the way. When they have like this fun connection between each other that just kind of steps outside of the 18th century standards. But yes, just so funny. And the way Denzel leans in when Jamie's like, I'm not sure when we're supposed to speak. And he's like, well, it appears like the spirit has moved thee to speak. And he says it in like a nice way. He's not being like sarcastic or anything, but it's just so genuine. It's funny. But yes, so Jamie does actually stand to speak, and he says nice words about Ian and telling him that he's proud of the man he's become. And then Denzel actually feels moved to speak. And it seems at first that it's not going to be a positive thing, because he explains, like, once the war started and Rachel wanted to go with him, he felt immense guilt about her coming along, especially because he was concerned about her being around all the violence and the soldiers. But then, after some slight heat between him and his sister, he explains that after she found Ian, he realized that he didn't have to be worried for her. And it's just like a sweet moment of accepting Ian into the family and accepting that he's a good match for Rachel. So it was a beautiful moment. But it's just interesting with the slight little tension there. Ian then stands and he addresses Rachel, and he tells her that she has brought him joy and made him feel in a way that he never thought he would be able to feel again. And it's just such a beautiful realization that you kind of have in this moment. Like, she really does make Ian happy and really brings out like the light in him. And this is when Rachel stands and she officiates their marriage by saying that she takes him to be his wife. And it's an interesting wedding because, like, there's not really a vow situation here, and he never says anything in terms of I take thee, but obviously they get married. But it was just an interesting way of doing the wedding, not your typical wedding to see, but I thought it was interesting, and I definitely loved the banter that happened with it. But yes, they get married and they have their wedding night, and I loved that there were some similarities here between Claire and Jamie's wedding night, especially like when he's helping Rachel to unlace her stays, and there's just kind of this nice build up between them, and she's interestingly not as fearful as Ian was afraid she would be. So it was interesting to see, and they do have a nice wedding night together, and it was a beautiful scene, I will say. Now with Jamie, a different story. He basically sits up all night thinking about Lord John and thinking about William, and he tells Claire like how he's just feeling all these feelings right now, and especially with William, he feels like he's failed him, especially. But Claire tries to assure him like, you didn't fail him, like even though he's going through something right now, like he's so much like you, and he's brave, he's strong, he's going to be fine. And it's just, again, I love these scenes between Jamie and Claire where they're reassuring to each other, like they build each other up, they keep each other standing. That's the Jamie and Claire I like. Sorry, I'm still getting over that last episode. He's still not terribly happy about being in the room where things went down between Claire and Lord John, but it's like, sir, it is what it is. It happened. She explained it. I still don't know if she told him that they got married. Like, that's not really stated anywhere. Like, I'm so confused right now. Hopefully it'll be mentioned at some point, because it really just feels like Jamie thinks that they just had a one-night stand. And it's like, that's not the case. Technically, if you think about it, they consummated the marriage, which back then was a big deal, so I don't know. Anyway, I'm not gonna harp on that any longer. But yes, this does seem like Jamie is going to be prompted to go make sure that Lord John is okay. I don't know how he's going to find him, or if they're just gonna cross paths at some point, because the next scene that we see Jamie and Claire, he walks into the room with his uniform, and it looks like he's about to go fulfill his duty as the Brigadier General, I believe is the name. Sorry, I'm trying to get those right because last time I did not. But yes, seems like he's going to go meet up with his men, and the way Claire looks at him, like she's so proud of him, and she tells him like he's at least finally wearing the right color now, because if you recall back to season 5 when he was fighting for the British when the war was starting, he was given that red coat. It's nice to see him like wearing his proud colors. And obviously it's kind of a tough thing for Jamie and Claire to go back into war, and especially now that he has this new title and new role to play, it's almost scarier. But Claire tries to assure him like she's going to be there with him and stand by him. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the war plays out with them involved, and yeah, just it's all coming together. All right, that was episode 13, very big episode, and yes, I thought it was great. They did a good job with Rachel and Ian's wedding. I thought it was well done. It was unique, and yeah, it felt like very beautiful between them. And I know it might seem like it was very rushed because they haven't even been together a whole season, but I think they work off of each other really well. It would have been nice to see more of that build up between them. Obviously, there's not a lot of time, and maybe they weren't greenlit for season 8 yet when they were filming this, so that also could have played a factor in that. But hopefully this means we get to enjoy seeing them as husband and wife a little longer as well. So there's the consolation there. But also, something I want to correct. I don't remember if I said Fiona's husband's name. I believe it's Ernie. I might have said the wrong name. So it's Fiona and Ernie. They are the ones who are taking care of Jemmy and Mandy. And yeah, hopefully we'll get to see them again. I like that they've taken on kind of like an aunt and uncle role for them. And they've kept the friendship, obviously, with Bree and Roger, so that's nice to see. I mentioned we saw Lord John for a second, so that's going to play a role in the next episode. And it also looks like we will see William again in the next episode as well. Looks like he's going to fully commit to the British Army. I don't know what's happening with Jane exactly. I know that story is going to get dark if they go by the books, but not sure if she was just in the one episode or not. But anyway, yes, it'll be interesting to see how William plays out in the rest of the season. He has clearly made many an enemy in the last episode. So tell me what all of you thought of episode 13. What did you think of Roger meeting his father finally? What did you think of Ian and Rachel's wedding and wedding night? And what do you think will happen in the next episode? Looks like it's going to be exciting as we get back into the American Revolution officially. And yeah, I will see you for episode 14. My goodness, how are we already on that? That is insane. I hope you all have a very wonderful holiday season. If you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. If you celebrate Hanukkah, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, just happy everything. I hope you all have a wonderful time with family and friends. And if you are missing loved ones, I 100% understand that. It's not easy, and I went through it once, and I'm going through it again, and we'll get through it. I always say the first year is the hardest, especially as you go through the motions, you go through each occasion, and they're not there. It's hard, but it becomes just a little easier as time goes on. It becomes less painful, and you remember the fond memories, and I hope that happens for you. So yes, I hope you are all well, and I will see you next week for episode 14. Bye, everyone.